Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So I've got a very general question today of who buys homes as is. So we really have to discuss what the hell we're talking about, because a property can be sold as is for a few reasons. First of all, what does as is even mean? As is means that whoever's buying it is taking it the way it is, and that could be due to a condition problem. So the house is disgusting, and basically the seller is saying, I don't want to make repairs. Don't come back to me and make repairs. Don't come back to me to ask me to make repairs. Um, the second issue it could be is because of a municipal issue. So it may, for example, have an open permit or an open violation. Very common in Long Island. Sorry about that. And the seller saying, guess what? You're going to take it with whatever's there, and don't ask me to fix it. And I understand it's going to show up on title, right? Open permits and open violations do show up on title, and usually they are grounds for a buyer to walk away. But if you stipulate in the listing that it's as is, and certainly most importantly in the contract, right? Really a very important reason to use an attorney. If you have any kind of issue, you want to be proactive about it and add it in the contract and say, hey, like I recently bought a house and I'm contracted to buy a house and it's got an open permit and open violation, and I said you can stipulate those things, but if anything else shows up, then I may not buy it. And he's like, no problem. So you have to put those issues that you are selling it as is for in the contract. That can be an issue. What else can be an issue for as is? Sometimes you're selling it with an occupant, right? Either, believe it or not, sometimes a family member of the seller, sometimes a tenant, and you're selling it as is because you want them to take it with the occupants. So those are the typical things that show up. Now, first of all, who buys them? I buy them. Well, not, I wouldn't say most. I buy with all those issues, right? I buy properties that are in bad condition. I buy properties with tenants, cooperative tenants, non-cooperative tenants. I buy properties with municipal issues. I buy them all the time, um, several times a month. And the issue is that not all investors do. So, for me at least, if someone has a non-cooperative tenant, I looked at it as a real good opportunity because they're not going to be able, almost certainly not going to be able to sell it retail to an ordinary buyer, and most of my competitors don't do it. But I'll still buy it. Obviously, I have to get it at enough of a discount. The price has to be discounted enough that it makes sense for me to go through the motions with the tenant, possibly evict them, or deal with the tenant in my own way. So the answer really is our investors. For all those cases, me. Now, if you're just selling something with one of those issues, like it's a condition issue, you have to sell it to somebody, usually if the condition is bad enough, who is an all cash buyer who doesn't need to get a mortgage. Because if the property is in really bad shape, no one's going to get a mortgage on it. So just a couple of things that come up: if the kitchen doesn't work, if there's a hole in the roof, if the electrical or plumbing systems don't work. If you buy a property from an REO, a real estate owned or a bank owned property, very often they winterize, which means they shut off all the systems. So the heat doesn't work, the electrical doesn't work, and in that case, no bank is going to lend, no regular lender is going to lend a mortgage on it because they want to see that those systems work. So you need to sell to an investor or to an end user buyer who's got the cash and doesn't need to get a mortgage to buy the property. So that's an as is home. If it's got municipal issues, then most lenders are going to be okay with certain things, with an open permit, maybe an open violation. Some lenders are not. Some lenders are going to tell you you have to either clear up the violation or close up the permit, or they want you to hold money in escrow until it's done. It really depends on which lender you use, and it depends what the violation is also, or open permit what it's for. So those are important factors to keep in mind. It really depends what the issue is, and that'll determine who possibly can buy it. Um, you may sell a house to a neighbor who's doesn't need a mortgage and just wants the land, and he doesn't care about all those issues because they knocked the house down. So it always depends on what the situation is, and it depends on how bad the problem is, right? Again, if sometimes people will sell property as is, even though the house is completely mortgageable, it's okay. It's just really dated and old, and they're just concerned that someone's going to come in and say, I want you to fix this. I want you to redo this. I want you to repair this. And they don't want to do that. So in that case, you really can sell property to almost anyone. You just have to be clear, I'm not making any repairs. And I've listed dozens, if not 100 houses for people in situations like that, where they thought, I don't have water. Let me get some water. Where they thought, hey, if I sell this house, they're going to force me to make repairs. And then I went in the house and I go, listen, the house is old, but I don't think you're going to have a problem with that. You just have to be clear on whoever makes an offer that we're not making any repairs. And then what happens sometimes is, despite your clarity, the guy will send in an inspector and he'll say, oh, the boiler has only got an effective remaining life of 10 years. I want you to replace the boiler. And then we'll have a conversation with them and say, we made it very clear we're not making any repairs. But that's the case in any situation, right? If you are selling a property in New York, so again, there are no inspection contingencies on contracts on residential property in New York. Almost never. Let's just say never. But what happens is after you agree to a price, they do an inspection, and very often they're going to ask for things. But so people say, "Oh, I don't want to be asked for it." Listen, you can be asked for anything. You just say no, right? I've told people, listen, everything they're asking for is ridiculously minor. Just say no. And while there are some unscrupulous realtors, attorneys, basic jerks who tell their clients, "Hey, offer 20,000 more than asking, and don't worry, I'll get it back to you on the inspection." Those guys really pissed me off. I had that recently. Had a deal I sold. Went to contract to thought I was going to contract to sell. Guy offered 20,000 above asking, which is not uncommon in today's market, and then asked me to replace the roof. And I said, I just replaced the roof 6 months ago. And he said, well, the guy said there's a possible leak. I mean, I looked at the thing, it was ridiculous. It was like 2 knots in the wood on trim. It was not a leak. But the guy was asking for ridiculous things, and I just said, go screw yourself, right? And the guy walked away, and that's fine, right? And I tell sellers that all the time. People can ask for anything. You can say yes or no, right? I typically, if somebody gives me a long list, and smart people give long lists, I'll pick 1 or 2 things that I think are legitimate and that are not that expensive, and I'll do them, and I'll say I'm not doing the rest, and they feel like they got something, and that's a very, very typical situation, very typical. But understand, even if you say you're selling a home as is, it's not uncommon for some moron um, realtor or buyer to say, "Oh, I need, the inspection says you got to fix the roof," and you can say, "I told you this was as is. We're not refixing the roof. You can continue with you can continue or not." And they might go, "Well, we'll do it, but we want a $2,000 credit," and you can decide whether that's worth it or not. Or they could say yes, or they could say no. But the point is, it's a negotiation on every single sale, every single time, whether it's as is or not. Right? Very often you're going to get asked for things, you're going to look at it and wonder what they're talking about. Right? I've completely gut renovated a home where everything was perfect and new, and then people ask me to make 12 repairs. And I would say, and at that point I have to decide, right, is this offer so good that it's worth it for me not to piss him off? Or are there so many other people that are close that I can just tell this guy to go to hell? That is basic parts of the negotiation. You have to evaluate whether, hey, this guy is $20,000 more than the next guy. He's asking me to do things that are going to cost me $5,000. It's worth it. So I say, okay, and I'll do it because I'm still going to net more money. Or you could say, this guy's asking me for things that are so expensive, the next offer is better for me if he's not asking for those things. That's the trick, though. You don't know what the next guy's going to ask for because until you accept the offer, they're not going to do an inspection. So I've done things like that where the guy asked me for things, wouldn't budge. I went to the next guy, I go, listen, you're less money than the top offer, which very often makes them feel like they're getting a deal. I'll say, if you waive the inspection, I'm going to accept your offer and let's go to contract. Generally, if the house is in really good shape, a lot of people say yes to that. You have to determine whether that's worth it. Again, it all depends on what offers you're getting, where they stand, how they are. But whether it's as is or not as is, you always have the option as a seller to make the repairs that the buyer is asking for or not make the repairs that the buyer is asking for. And yes, the buyer can always ask for repairs. Even if you're clear that it's as is, they can still ask. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you are interested in a course I teach on how to do what I do, it's howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you are interested in finding out more about coaching that I offer, it's coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any platform, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help my SEO, my search engine optimization. And please keep the comments coming. I post 5 times a week. I don't always know what to talk about. Your comments give me ideas on how to talk, on what to say. If you could comment and ask about anything, doesn't even have to be the topic of the video you're watching. If it's a simple answer, I'll just reply. If it's something I've covered in depth, I'll send you a link to a video or videos. And if it's something new, then I will do a new video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching. I really appreciate it.